First, let me start off, if you don't mind, with an opening statement. One, it's great to be here. Really great to be here. It's been a fast 2 weeks. I got here just, I guess, not even 2 weeks. So I'm coming about a week and a half. Hit the ground running. But first, want to thank Matt for the opportunity. And as I get into really why I wanted to come here, he was one of the main reasons. Also like to thank Mark and Brian, Russ and Ed for making the process really smooth. Getting back to why I came, because I'm sure there's questions on that. You know, a lot of reporters have tried to hit me up and ask about, you know, why'd you leave? Why'd you leave a head job? It really has more to do with this place than anything else. And one was Matt. You know, I've known Matt for a while. I worked with his brother, worked with Kyle, worked with Robert, worked with guys that he's known. So I've known of Matt. I've respected what he's done. I've watched what he's done here. I think he's like 56 and 27. Great coach, great leader, great person, great family man. Those are all really important things for me coming to work for another head coach, leaving a head coaching job. So Matt was a big reason. And then Brian, watching the talent that he has acquired over the last few years. When I really started to watch the tape, watch the last few draft classes, and the job that he's done and will continue to do going forward, that was obviously very appealing to me. Maybe the biggest of players. When you look at what this team did and in the adversity that they kind of overcame early in the season, I mean, that says so much, one, about Matt, the organization, the staff, and then about the players, a young team, the way they stuck together and really won at the end. Watching when our season ended, watching in the playoff games and watching at the end of the season, I mean, it was really impressive. And that it really excited me. And then I guess lastly is a guy that grew up loving football. It's the Green Bay Packers. I mean, this is like the mecca of the football world to me, and probably to most people who grew up loving football. Just being here and driving in the Lambeau every day, it still feels surreal. The community, maybe the best fans in all of the world as well. I mean, that made a really, really hard decision for me, leaving Boston College, players that I love, staff that I loved, the leadership at the school. It made a really hard decision a lot easier, and ultimately that's why I decided to come. And now that my head's finally cleared up a little bit and I see things a heck of a lot more clearly than when I was making that decision, there's no doubt about it that I made a great one. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be around all you guys. I'm excited to be a part of the staff, some of the new guys that we brought in, and I really can't wait to get going. So with that, you guys, whatever you got, I'm here to answer.
Jeff, we've heard about kind of your core beliefs as a defensive mind.
What have you heard?
Everything. You just press man coverage every single snap.
Not every snap, but I like to press people.
Does that change when you come to the NFL? I know you've obviously been in the NFL before, but how much do those core beliefs change when you see the personnel you have here and it's a different game in this league?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the NFL, right? And then I went to Ohio State, and the big knock on me when I went to Ohio State was this is an NFL guy. He can't coach in college, right? So the things I believe in defense, or whether you're playing 3-4, 4-3, press man, which I do love, zone coverage, vision and break, quarters match. I mean, it comes down to can you take your players who you have and put them in the best position to succeed? And can you take your players and maximize their ability? Like, every player wants to get better, and that's our job to do. Our job is to put the players in the best position to succeed and make plays. And that's through scheme, right? People can say that a lot of the scheme is simpler, but it's very detailed. We try to make it simple for the players so they can play fast, so they don't have to think, so they can be confident and not be afraid to make mistakes, so I can get them the information, we can get them the information that they need, so they can go out there and be fearless and play with their hair on fire and just run and hit and cover and get off blocks and tackle. I mean, that's the beauty of the scheme. And we got guys that can press. Let's line up and get our hands on people. I mean, I think that's really important. You get a guy who can play a zone third, who can read 2-1. Let's do it and go get the ball. I mean, I've been around like Richard Sherman, who was as good at anybody to ever play the game at that. And then I've been around some of the best press corners that have ever played the game. Guys like Darrelle Revis and a lot of really good guys. So, you know, as we really piece this together, and I'm sure you know right now, and we're watching it, we're putting it together as a staff, but those core beliefs aren't going to change. That's how we're going to play, and our players should be excited about that. And I'm excited about that as a coach.
Jeff, when you got here, I assume you went and looked back at what they did last year. Why do you think they weren't quite as good as they wanted to be on defense last year?
I think they did a lot of good things. And I think they played a lot of good defense in a lot of games. And I have respect for everybody that was on that staff and all the guys that were on the field. For me right now, it's about moving forward. And as this thing gets going, try to improve it. And that's really where my head's at right now.
So you had success, obviously, in college, but how do you know what you did there is going to work in the NFL? I mean, you mentioned on that podcast with Anna Brennan, it's a totally different game with the quarterback runs and everything. So how does what you did at BC translate to what you need to do here?
Well, it's going to be a little bit different than we did at BC. At BC, you had to worry about a quarterback pulling the ball and running every single play. So I had to, when I went back, I had to adapt to that, because I remember going back from when I was in San Francisco, and all of a sudden the quarterback was running the ball every play. I was like, whoa, this is a little bit different, right? So you got to watch the film, you got to adjust. I paid very close attention to the NFL. A lot of times at night, I turn on film and watch what very similar people, a lot of close friends I have on defense were doing, and I've stayed up to date on a lot of it. But then we've got a great staff. I mean, we've got, Derek Ansley, who's just a coordinator of the Chargers, Anthony Campanelli, who I think is a star. I think he's going to bring energy. I think he is a brilliant football coach. We've obviously kept Reb, who I think did a really good job here. We've moved him to the D-line. I brought Vince Ogabasi, who was my assistant D-line coach. He was with us in San Francisco as well, so he's been part of a very similar scheme, and he's a guy that I really trust. And then Ryan Downer was actually a quality control coach when I was with the Browns. Totally different system, right? And that's the other thing. I've been a part of a lot of different defenses. And again, it goes back to what is this team going to be able to do best to allow us to win games? And whether those ideas come from the staff and we all put it together, I mean, that's how I'm going to do it here. I've been a head coach now, and I think that's helped me, and I think that will help me be a better assistant. I think it will help me be a better coordinator, because I'm more open to ideas now, because I don't care whose idea it is. If it's the best idea and it's going to help us win games, then that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're in the process of doing now as we piece it all together.
Jeff, like you said, you've been in San Francisco with their style of defense. Then with Patton, it was a completely different style of defense. Where do you sort of fit in between that in terms of pressure and non-pressure, things like that?
I think it's a great question. I think there's down and distances where you got to get exotic and you have to get after people and you have to pressure the quarterback. You got to get guys that can rush and you got to get guys that can cover, but you have to get after the quarterback. I think there's down distances, situations where not as much pressure, but when you get a chance to get after the quarterback, you have to. So I think there's a very fine line of that. And as we build this thing, I think you're going to see some things that look a little bit more exotic, and then there's sometimes we look simpler. I think that's the key to all this.
I know you said you were more drawn to the Packers than drawn away from maybe trying to leave college, but I'm just wondering, how much did your job at BC change from the time you got there to the time you left with NIL and transfer portal? And could you envision other college coaches maybe making a similar move to the one you just made, since it's kind of a unique shift? Yeah,
it is unique. And I don't want to speak for other college coaches. I think being a college head coach is, it's a great job. It's a great position. How did it change? First year I got back to college, when I left at Ohio State, it was pretty normal. And then when I got the BC job, COVID hit. So I got to know my team over Zoom. We had masks on in practice, and that was way different than anything I've ever experienced. Then the next year, the transfer portal came in, which it was like, all right, now I have to recruit players, but I also have to keep the guys that are on my team from leaving. There's no contract, so you recruit a guy and develop a guy, and all of a sudden he can leave. And then came paying players, NIL. So it was a storm, basically, since I got the head job, of things that kept getting thrown at you, but you do the best you can and you adapt. Certainly college football has changed, and I do think that, I'm not going to get on a soapbox here today and say this, but what I will say is that I do think there needs some things to change, but it's still a great game and there's still great coaches, but it changed a lot since I started that job.
What traits are you looking for in the post-safety?
Post-safety, I like how you use that term. That's good. It's exactly what I would call him. I want a guy who can erase things. We got to eliminate explosive plays when we play this defense. So if a run hits up the middle, this guy's got to come out of the middle field with his hair on fire. He's got to be able to get a guy down. I also want him to be a guy when a ball carrier's wrapped up, he goes and he finishes off the pile. I want a guy who can go from sideline to sideline and take the ball away. I think that position has to be a guy with high ball production, meaning he's got to be able to intercept the ball. He's got to be a guy that can communicate, and he's got to be a guy that can get guys lined up and make some calls back there. And I'd love a guy who can play man, so I guess I'm describing the perfect player to you. But those are some of the traits that I would look for in playing that position.
Size, is that very important, or is that less important?
It's become less important. You've seen guys back there that can be anywhere from 190 to 205 or even bigger. I coached some really good ones in San Francisco who were 190, 195. I've coached some good ones that are 215. I'm not a guy that's going to just say you have to fit this mold and be 6'2" and 205 or 210 to play a certain position. I think it's more trait-based. Now, if you can get a guy with those traits and he's bigger, I think it helps. But I think you can have both.
So is safety a super critical position for your defense? You know, you look league-wide, it's maybe a bit diminished, maybe compared to like some other positions, but for your defense, is it just a critical spot?
I think it's an important spot. Yeah, I think that guy back in the middle of the field, when things break down, he has to get it down. When they throw the ball up in the air, he has to go and get it. I think it's a very important spot in the defense.
Jeff, what did you like about Campanile? What did you know about him, and what really...
It wasn't Hard Knocks. That's not where I got to know him. A lot of you guys are probably thinking that's where we found him. A lot of you guys probably watched him on Hard Knocks. But I'm going to reiterate this. When you see Anthony on Hard Knocks, you probably think of a fiery, energetic, motivator, you know, guy from Jersey, because he definitely has a Jersey accent, right? But he's one of the best, most loyal people that I've ever been around, and he's one of the best football coaches that I've ever been around. We go way back, yet we really haven't worked together. When I was really a young college coach, he was a coordinator at a high school I used to go to. They were one of the best high schools in the nation. And we'd always spend hours talking football, and I mean hours. So finally, when I was at Pitt, I had a chance to get him offered to be a graduate assistant because I thought so highly of him. Well, the head coach was let go, so then I went to Rutgers, and as I was leaving Rutgers to go to Tampa, I got him a GA job there. And we kept in touch always. I mean, football questions constantly, get together whenever we can. When I got to Ohio State, I tried to hire him, but he, for one reason or another, he couldn't leave at the time. When I got to Boston College, I tried to hire him, but he decided to go somewhere else. So this time I recruited him a lot better. But that's really my history with Anthony. I'm glad, very glad that he's here. I think you guys will enjoy him. More importantly, I think the players are going to love him. And that's really important as we built this staff. I mean, you ask about style of defense. The one thing that's probably most important to me, even more so than X's and O's, the guys, the coaches, I mean, we're in this thing together. When you turn on the film, these guys got to all be running the ball because they respect one another. And they got to play together. And you got to see that on the tape. And that's one of the biggest things that, you know, I'm going to stress with this group, with this staff, and the style of play we're going to play on defense. These guys got to love playing with each other, and they got to love each other.
Jeff, what did you like about Vince? Can I just ask real quick, what did you like about Vince and Ansley, too? I mean,
I'll start with Vince. Vince was, when I was in San Francisco, I met Vince. He was the assistant D-line coach. And highly intelligent, played the position, Duke grad, really good relationships with the players, really good teacher, fundamentals, technique, and then he was at UCLA with Chip. And when I got the job at BC, he was a D-line coach at Chip, and I called and, you know, I took a swing and he decided to come. His players love playing for him, and he gets on them hard. He coaches them hard, he's demanding, he holds them to a standard, but he's got such good relationships and he's such a good teacher. And he's so smart. From a big picture-wise, I think he has the ability to see it all. So he's really sharp. With Derek, Derek and I know each other from when I was a DB. My first DB coach the first go-around, being at combines, getting to know him, working the combine drills together. He worked with one of my good friends out in Oakland at the time. So we kind of talked quite a bit, followed his career, kept in touch with him. And then he's got coordinator experience. So as we piece this thing together, he knows what it's like to sit in my chair. and he brings a lot of value in some different things. He's been a part of some different scheme, which I think will help.
When you were at Pitt, did you know right away, you guys know right away what you had in Revis? And you've come to the draft and develop team of the NFL. You're going to have a young roster. I suppose player development, I mean, from what you just came from, that's got to be one of your signatures, right?
Yeah, I think player development's the most important thing at any level. I mean, you got to get players better at every level along the way. I mean, I thought I was a really good coach when I had Revis. When he left, I realized I had a lot of work to do. He was a special player he was a junior when I got there, so I can't say I had much to do with his development, but it was fun to coach him, and I hope to coach more guys like him in the future. But player development's huge. And at Boston College, we had to take, some of those lower star guys and try to get them to play like 4 or 5 star guys. That's always been important to me. It's always been important to me to try to make the game simpler for players. And that's the biggest thing you'll hear me say a lot. I want to simplify it for them because I think part of me being a coach is I have to be a great teacher. So I take all this information that I have and all these things, but I make it very simple for you to understand so you can go out and play fast and aggressive and not worry about anything. That's why practice is so important.
Hey, Jeff. Speaking of Revis, I'm sure we all went back and listened to every podcast we could find that you had done. And you did one in San Francisco with my buddy Matt Miyoko when you were with the 49ers. And on there, you're talking about how much from being around Revis at Pitt and then with the Bucks, how you learned about special players and learning more from players than maybe from coaches. I'm wondering where you kind of stand on input from players, because there's been a couple instances here over the years where maybe guys didn't feel like they were heard. It created some issues maybe for them. So how do you kind of view that as part of being a defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I think there has to be great communication, but I think first there has to be great relationships, right? I mean, these guys aren't just going to trust me when I walk into a room because I'm the defensive coordinator. I have to earn that from them, and they have to earn it from me. And then I think once you establish that trust and you develop a relationship, then you can have hard conversations. I have said it before. I mean, I picked Rondé Barber's brain on how to play nickel, and I learned more from him than any coach I've ever been around. He's probably one of the best nickels. He probably is the best nickel to ever play the game in that scheme. So why wouldn't I ask him those questions, right? It's the same with Sherm. And I've talked to Sherm quite a bit as I've already taken this job because I have a great relationship with him. But I'm a coach and he's in the room and I get there and I'm learning the scheme and he's seeing 3 in a way that instead of saying to him on the field, no, this is the way to do it, it's like, wait a minute, what'd you see there and why'd you do that, right? And then sometimes it was, no, I do it like this, but then sometimes it was, all right, I got it and I'm gonna teach it that way from now on, right? So there has to be some give and take, but that has to be earned. And that's very, very important to me.
Your players have talked about how you make it easy. Sounds like that's something you pride yourself on. But from all the countless hours that you pour over film and dissect stuff, how do you boil that down? How do you make it easy for them? How do you do that?
Well, I think that's part about being a great teacher, right? Is you sit in those meetings sometimes and you go over so many different things and you have this idea, then this idea, then this idea, and you scratch that off. You always got to keep in mind, what are they going to be able to learn? What are they going to be able to play really, really fast and excel at? Like I could come up with a great blitz, and it might be check it to 3x1, 2x2, empty, bunch, motion here, and draw it on paper and think I'm the smartest coach alive, and then I can put it in, and if it doesn't work, I can blame the players. But that's not good coaching, and it's not good teaching. You know, what can they handle where they can execute at a high level and succeed at it? I mean, that's so important for us to understand as we put stuff in, and that's why you can't overload them. Right? The whole key to this game on defense is we just can't give up free plays and let people score. We got to make them earn it. And then we got to take our shots at time and be aggressive and be the ones on attack too. We're not just going to sit back and let them go down the field. I'm not saying that at all. But then your staff, I mean, they have to be great teachers and they have to be great communicators. And I think that's always been the key for me is you want to be around guys like that.
Have you been in touch with any current players? I know they're probably off on vacation somewhere, whether you reach out to them, they reach out to you. And when you watch back the tape of whether it's this past season or past seasons, who do you foresee as maybe your cornerstones, and then are there guys who catch your eye as guys that you're really excited to get your hands on to take their game to the next level?
I'm excited to get my hands on a lot of these guys, and I think there's quite a few who could be cornerstones. I don't want to single anyone out now out of respect for everybody else and all the rest of the film I have to watch, and that's probably the answer you thought I was going to give. But it is what it is, right? Your other question, have I talked to all the players? No, but I will. I've started to reach out. I mean, I've only been here for, the days go fast and all of a sudden it's night. So I've talked to a bunch of the players, and I'm going to continue to reach out and introduce myself, as our staff is going to do as well. Just introduce myself and get to know them a little bit, get to know where they're at, families, and that type of stuff. But I'm definitely working through that.
Do you have to introduce yourself to Isaiah again?
Say it again?
You have to introduce yourself to McDuffie?
I hope not. No, he texted me. We talked very quickly after I took the job. It would be good to be around him again.
How many hours of cut-ups have you looked at on the personnel you're inheriting?
Say it again?
How many hours of cut-ups do you think you've already looked at, just looking over the personnel you're inheriting?
A lot. I would say that, here's the beauty about being a new coach and, all of us on defense, there's a lot of new guys. We really don't have anywhere to go. I either stay here, I go across the street to the hotel and go to sleep. So, one of the hard parts is, my wife and 2 little girls are home right now, and that's hard because I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old and my wife, who I haven't seen. So you take advantage of that. You don't have to be home, there's no one to see. So you just stay here at night and watch film. The other thing for me, guys, is, I probably got to watch more football the last week and a half than I've gotten to watch in like 4 months. As a head coach in college, you're pulled in so many different directions. I feel like a kid in a candy store again, just sitting there and being able to watch tape. It's probably one of the most refreshing and clear minds I've had in such a long time. I'm having a blast doing it.
Jeff, what did Matt give you as a directive for how to run this defense, and what's kind of his vision for what he wants out of you and this team to do defensively?
It was more conversation more than a directive. Matt knows my background. While we've never worked together, he knows a lot of guys that I have worked with, and he's close with a lot of guys I've worked with. So we talked about what my vision would look like and what his would look like, and we're on the same page with that. So I think if you talk to him, you talk to me, it's going to look very similar.
The previous staffs here have been kind of cerebral and not as, intense, outspoken, but you said Vince is pretty spoken. Rebovich is that way, and of course Anthony is too. To what degree do you want that to be the signature of your coaches, and to what degree does that work in the NFL?
To have energy?
Yeah. To be yellers or.
Well, I don't know if it's yellers. I don't know if you're going to find a lot of yelling. I think you're going to get a lot of coaching, and I think you're going to see a lot of juice on the field from that staff. But that doesn't mean we're yelling. And I want to be demanding, but never demeaning. But I want guys out there who have energy and enjoy being around. If we're going to ask the players to run around and run to the ball and get after it, then our coaches need to be the same way. And that's really important to me. So I think there's a part of being cerebral, but when we get a chance to get out on that field, we got to go. But I don't think we're going to be the type of staff, I know we're not going to be, that motivates through fear at all. These guys are going to know we care about them, that we want what's best for them, and that we're in it with them. And we're going to push them, and they're going to push us.
Maybe you're nowhere close to this point, but Quay Walker is like the best linebacker. Does he automatically go in the middle, or is there some other thought there on how you line those guys up at linebacker?
Quay's a talented player. As we build this thing, we're going to make sure he's in a position to make a lot of plays. So whatever we feel as we piece this together where that is, that's where we'll put him.
Jeff, when a new coordinator comes in, the fans want to hear that he's going to play press man all the time. He's going to blitz the hell out of them.
Why does everybody like press so much?
I think they like aggressive, right? Nobody ever says anything different. I'm curious, Matt was in here, though, talking about how you're going to have vision to the ball more. So how does that kind of, in general terms, how do you kind of view how you mix man and zone in order to be able to do that, but also maybe be a little more aggressive in some situations?
You got to have change-ups, and you have to have calls that complement one another. Our zone coverages are built off vision and break. That allows guys to play fast, so they're not looking at people and looking around for people. The essence of playing vision and break coverage is when the ball's thrown, you have 2 or 3 guys going 100 miles an hour to the ball carrier. And I think that's what the biggest difference is. And you have to have complements to that, because a lot of times when you want to pressure, you can't play that style of defense. You have to be aggressive and get your hands on people. So I think there's a place for both. But I'm big on vision and break, because I want to see as many people get to the ball carrier and as fast as we can over and over again.
When you bring a safety up quite a bit, does that allow you to play more base defense? Do you plan on playing more base than the normal team? I think it's usually about 2/3 nickel in this league, 2/3 to 3/4.
It just depends on what personnel we get. If teams are going to have 3 wide, and we're probably going to want to go more nickel defense. If teams want to go with 2 wide in the game, then we'll probably be in base defense or bring more D linemen in the game. But I think you got to match personnel right now. I think that's really important. And then there's times maybe not. Maybe we just leave base on the field or nickel on the field. But the bigger they get, the bigger we got to get. And the faster they get, the faster we got to get. Make sense?
Jeff, it's been a long time since there's been a shift. In '09, Don Capers came in, they went to a 3-4 from being a 4-3, and the GM went and got B.J. Raji and Clay Matthews. It sounds like Matt wanted to be able to make a change while not maybe having to change personnel a ton. Based on the feel you have at this point, do you feel like you have the pieces in-house that can make the shift, that it's a more subtle shift than maybe it might have been back then?
I think it is more of a subtle shift, because once you get to 11 personnel, which is what you were saying in nickel defense, which is a much higher percent right now than, say, 2 tight ends or 2 backs in a game. Most teams, including here, are playing 4 down, 4-2-5, 4-3, whatever you want to call it. So it is a less change, I think, right now than it would be, and we feel good about that.
2 more, please.
Do any of the defensive linemen you have, and I don't know how much you've looked at it, but can some of those guys play edge? You know,
Yeah,
will they be able to?
We got some guys that are going to be good on the edge.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get around them.
Can you move guys around that in that way, or do you try to keep your edge guys like the Preston Smiths and Rashawn Garys and people like that?
I mean, yeah, there's times when you can move them around. You get the 3rd down and you want to get your best 4 pass rushers on the field. Let's find out who those are and put them all on the field. I agree with you.
Jeff, I don't want the last question to be a dad question, but there's a bunch of them in here. When do Gina and the girls, do they finish out the school year? Like, are you going to be living at Lodge Kohler for the next X number of months without them? Or how do you kind of balance the quality of life part with the getting to work on the football part?
Well, I really appreciate you asking that, because that's actually really important, and I thank you for that. Yeah, that's hard. It's really hard. I got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. I think this is the first move that the 8-year-old understands that we're moving. The 5-year-old just knows that the new team's the Packers, right? So it's hard, and I'm very lucky to have a wife that understands. You know, she loved living in Boston. She had a great group of friends, and I'm moving, and I inherit friends who are the coaches, and I have something to do every day. And now she's got to find new friends. We got to find a new place to live, and she's got to do most of the moving. So it's a lot harder on her than it is to me. So I'm very grateful, and I really appreciate her for that. I'm going to get home this weekend and try to go back and forth as much as I can. But that's about the best I can do right now. But it's very important for me to be around her and the kids, and you guys will see them around as much as possible, because that's very important to me. So thank you for asking that question.